go into full discussion for 30 minutes, and I'll try to keep it closer to 30 minutes. If it's a really stimulating discussion, we can increase the time, but I will try to move people in and out while the debate is going on. Also, people in the audience, this is important. Please ask questions in the Send Your Questions Here channel. That will add more discussion to the table. Okay, I'm going to start with the timer. Jeffo, you have 1 minute and 30 seconds whenever you unmute your mic.
Okay, so I am neutral on this issue, and the reason I'm neutral is because I think both the pro-defund the police and anti-defund the police group aren't really agreeing on the same terminology. Most people who are against defund the police aren't really listening to what people who are saying defund the police really mean. They've narrowed it down just to a 3-word phrase. And then the defund the policers, most of them, but not all of them, have a much more nuanced view on what the phrase actually means than most people are actually understanding. So I'm neutral on this. I'll see the rest of my time.
Okay. Let's see. Sputnik, you can go.
All right. I am against defunding the police because if you can just actually put a criminal perspective on like the day to day that we live. If we have a certain place where there's high crime, how are citizens and people supposed to sleep peacefully at night knowing that there is high criminality outside, and then now you have movements like defund the police making it impossible for those criminals to face any type of justice whatsoever. That would be like the main issue that we would be facing, especially in big cities. But I understand that, the topic can vary depending on locality, but this is just like coming from the perspective of big cities. That's pretty much, I'm concluding that statement there.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I wasn't paying attention. Hangs, you have 1 minute and 30 seconds or less to talk.
I'm mainly just gonna say what Jeff said. I think I'm more neutral in this stance because my opinion on it's a little bit convoluted because I feel like police are inherently a good part of society as a whole and that we praise them as such, but I think that there should definitely be things done better in ways that police can actually become police and that how they can get their licenses and the ownership of a gun and all that. But I don't think that you should be taking away a department's funds or a local department in a small town or small city's funds because of actions of another police officers, because if you do that, then the entirety of that town's criminal rates, it may decrease or increase depending on where you live. But I think that there are a lot of things that you need to take into account before you make a decision on whether you want to defund the police or add funds to it or keep it the same as it is, because in my opinion, the police are essentially a paramilitary group that are subsidized as something else. They take around an eighth of what the military takes. I think the military has a budget around 800 or 900 billion, and the U.S. police force, or the amount of money given to the police, is around 120 billion, and it's only been increasing. But I think that there should be some some sides taken, and I think that there should be some things done better in that aspect. But I'm not really sure where to stand on it completely. But that's my take. I'll yield the rest of my time.
Okay. Anti-Federalist, you again have 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Okay, I am for defunding the police. I think that we are. Police budgets have increased massively since the start of the Iraq War. We're selling materials to them that is basically a way to recoup money that we shouldn't be recouping. It doesn't seem like policing has become more effective as we've ballooned these budgets. It doesn't seem like police wages have gone up with the increases in these budgets, at least to the same extent. And yeah, it doesn't seem like our communities have become safer. I don't think the police, depending on the areas I've been in my life, some areas are much better than others, but especially when I was in Southern California, it seems like the police are completely uneducated on their constitutional boundaries and the law around how they treat people. And it seems like we should be doing policing smarter, but throwing more money at armored trucks and stupid equipment seems like a bad way to go.
Okay. Now I originally didn't I know you were talking the last debate, so Baguette, if you want to talk about something, that's up to you, or if you just want to stay back as a mod.
Oh, I'm pretty neutral on this, so I'm gonna stay back. I would say this though, that I think if anything, if you want like police to be better, you probably have to fund them more. You got to probably get them more training, or maybe change up their training. But I really don't know.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna sit back on this one.
Oh yeah, no problem. Nugget, you have a minute and 30 seconds.
Yeah, how I stand is pretty much what Baguette said. I definitely think there's been a lot of problems with policing recently and a lot of controversies going on that shouldn't be going on. But if you defund the police, I think that just leads to less training and less education, which then leads to more mistakes and more controversy. So I'm not necessarily pro police in a sense, if you want to consider it that, but I am pro like not defunding the police because I think that would just lead to more problems. And I'll concede the rest of my time.
Okay. Last one, Bad Bunker.
Hi, okay. I am for defending the police. I think the general statement is relocating or redirecting funding away from the police department. And I think there are many underfunded areas of government, I guess, in the US. And as you've seen, throughout time, police funding has increased a little bit, but you see police brutality, hasn't dropped. It's still very frequent, and I guess you see more light shown on it nowadays, and you can see that police funding is kind of really peaking now, and it just hasn't become more effective. And so I think on the turn side, defunding the police department wouldn't, make it any less effective. That's my thing.
Okay. We've heard everyone's opinions. We're going to have a 30-minute debate. The chime can change, so it's not strictly 30 minutes. You can talk. Just please don't try to interrupt too much. But if you interrupt one or two times, we're not going to kick you or anything. Just keep this friendly and have a good debate. Anyone can talk, by the way. So
Okay, guys. So I want to start this up by stating the following. If you have people who obviously it's in the job title, it's police. If these people are not paid adequately, how are we going to retain them? And how are we going to recruit new people if they're getting defunded and they can just go get a job in the private sector instead? Who is actually going to be doing the job of keeping people safe if they're not getting paid substantially to do so? Wouldn't that be a demotivator to, what I just stated?
I agree with you. But again, I don't believe that was the point that Badunger was trying to make, right? She was saying that we should use some of the proceeds to put it in a more effective way of dealing with some lower level criminal issues through basically a reallocation of resources. It's not necessarily that the police are going to get paid less or anything. It's not, I don't hear them saying let's cut all police pay or really get rid of the police. It's more of let's spend money on more effective means, is what she's saying. Correct me if I'm wrong, Badunger.
Oh, maybe say that right. Relocating or redirecting is really what I think defunding means, and I think there's very many other things simple as the fire department. That money you've seen the fire department less brutality. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm so nervous. If we can relocate and redirect money to other branches that can do things similar to certain aspects that the police department does, I think that we don't need as large of a police force as we do if we maximize our other whatever.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to bring another argument to bear. In the United States alone, there is about 800,000 to 1 million police officers in total. These are police officers and peace officers combined in total. That's in the entire United States. So, in fact, police are not really a large group in the entirety of the United States. They're not really a large group. So, like most police brutality incidents, which do happen, I believe the media kind of gets on them, kind of tears a new one into the conscious effort of everybody here in the United States, utilizing sensationalist stories and whatnot, to be able to propagate a certain narrative that police are bad and whatnot, because I believe that's popular right now. And if you're really looking at the percentages and the number again, it's 800,000 to 1 million currently. It's not really a large group of the population. Like, yeah, and I'm done with that. Anybody has anything to say about like that type of statistic?
To your point, I also think that it's not going to, like, the number of police officers is definitely not going to rise. I think it's, if anything, going to decline. With, like you said, like, not liking police is kind of becoming popular in today's age. And I think that if you also defund the police, that leads to either less equipment, less training, or lower wages. It just has to, because less money has to mean less something somewhere. So, as if you also decrease the wages, then that means there'll be even less police officers. If you decrease the training, like I said, that'll lead to more mistakes. And if you decrease the equipment, then there will be a lot more. Granted, they're rare, but there will be more catastrophes. Like, the reason why modern police are so militarized is because of things like the Hollywood massacre, Hollywood shooting, whatever it was called, when bank robbers went to a bank fully armed with body armor and automatic weapons. And back then, police had like 6 shooters and maybe a pump action shotgun. So that's why they're so equipped these days, is to deal with things like that. So if we defund the police, and one of those things has to go, which will just lead to more issues.
I wanted to
I
add
have
on the
a.
wages
Oh,
thing.
sorry.
Sorry, no. So you can go ahead if you want.
All right. I was just going to say a point like if you're defunding the police, sorry, actually, if you've got loads of guns in America, if you look at my roles, I don't necessarily agree with this, but if you've got guns in America and everyone can defend themselves, then surely the idea of a police force isn't really necessary if everyone is armed enough, if you see what I mean. So if people can defend themselves and their businesses, then they wouldn't necessarily need to go to outside help outside of their own community.
Well, I mean, a huge part of the police's job is enforcing, like, traffic stops and revenue collection for the state.
Yeah, but you can probably delegate that to different organizations.
Well, okay, hold on. I want to talk about what you just said. If
I
everyone
was
has a
just
right
trying to think of a point for defunding. My bad.
okay, if everyone has a right to defend himself and owned like firearms, then the point of a police force would become obsolete, and then the entirety
That's
of the police
my
force
point.
would become privatized, and only the people who can afford them would afford that. But also going back to when someone mentioned the wages, police officers make double the median wage of an average American. They make around 64,000 in the median range, and the average American in the median range of income they make around 31,000. So I don't know where the cutting the wages would go. I don't know how much of an argument that is, because that's even above the average salary for a U.S. citizen. And we're talking about medians and averages. I don't think we know the difference, but I think the main conversation about defunding the police is the way that they are actually instituted as police. Like, comparing to most modern countries, the amount of time it takes to become a police officer in the U.S. is incredibly lower than other countries. More developed countries in Europe, the the qualifications to become a police officer, you have to put in thousands of hours of work, and in the US you need, I believe, a minimum of 650 to become a sworn in police officer. And I think that's where the disparity lies, that most police officers aren't really educated on the job that they're doing.
That's where I'm not for defunding the police, though, as I think if you do defund them, that'll just lead, like I said, to less education, less training, which they need more of. I agree with you on that. It's way too quick to become a police officer, and not only that, you either have to get hired by a department, which then they'll pay for your training, or you have to put $5,000. I believe it's, at least in my state, $5,000 up front for your own training, which is like, it definitely, unless you are really wanting to be in that position, you aren't just going to spend $5,000 to get training for a job you aren't even guaranteed to have yet. So,
I mean,
Yeah,
part of my
and
opening argument for defunding the police is that the police salaries haven't risen with the ballooning budgets, and it seems like a lot of these crazily increasing budgets are kind of a scam to sell retired military equipment at way higher than market rate. I mean, a lot of this is going to equipment that, you might need a SWAT team or two in a city, but some of this is getting ridiculous. So I don't know if anyone who's for defunding the police is for slashing police salaries. I just think that a lot of police departments in the United States have been really, really bad guarantors of our tax money.
I think I agree with you on that. They're becoming essentially a paramilitary of like a subordinate of the U.S. military itself. They don't need to invest millions, if not billions of dollars into machinery that are, essentially like armored tanks and all that. Instead, in my opinion, they should try and divert the money into more training, more availability of resources for officers so they can, assess situations and understand the job that they're doing because you're not going to need a police officer in every situation. If a person is having a mental breakdown or is in need of a social worker and you send a police, that's contradicting the job of police because you're supposed to be helping someone, and if you do that, police officers in our society, they're perceived as a threat, and someone who's not really well mentally, and a police officer comes to that area with a loaded weapon and potentially pointing at them, I don't think that they're going to be in the best situation to react in a way that the police officers deem safe and safe for their safety and for the other person as well.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can.
right.
Yeah, we
Okay, I
can.
just didn't want to like cut you off while you're like spitting facts. Um, yeah, no, absolutely. I don't think like there needs to be nearly as much funding in the police officers and not like direct officer pay, because that's not what I believe should be like directly attacked. But more or less like funding towards weapons and whatever. I think that money should be moved towards more social programs because um trying to find the words. If you have like easier access to help, there's like like you're less likely to commit a crime, you know. And like what you were saying about if you're in a situation where a social worker is far more appropriate, sending in someone with loaded weapons, um like guns, tasers, pepper spray, like that's not necessarily like the best choice.
Right. I certainly agree with the following, that we don't have to send police officers like, completely in full kit and full military kit to a situation where there's a mental breakdown occurring. But the thing is that like every situation that occurs in, whenever there's a 911 call, there's always an uncertainty of what the situation is going to be. Like a mental breakdown situation or mental issues with a certain individual, that could turn into a whole violent situation or criminal situation. And in many situations, this has actually occurred. There's many examples where something started as a domestic dispute and turned out into a full-on manslaughter. I'm saying first responders never know what they're responding to.
Yes, but to counter that, there are also many instances of the officer actually increasing the tension in the situation by basically assuming that they are a threat rather than trying to alleviate the situation. So just having a police officer go there doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to keep somebody from committing some type of crime. In fact, it might actually cause them to commit some kind of crime.
Right. Yeah. As I'm saying, the unpredictability of what's to occur is definitely this can be sorted out with training. With having the appropriate response, like having community officers or such. Like other countries such as Norwegian countries, or I believe even in the UK they have specialty officers that are completely dedicated to these types of issues. There's like certain branches within the police that can deal with that, but they will be accompanied by armed officers if just because of the unpredictability of every scenario.
But quite honestly, I think that's asking too much of a single police officer to both be a protector and then also know how to deal with people who have mental health issues. I mean, these are two very separate careers, and
But I
takes
mean,
two very separate type of people.
Well,
shouldn't
and
there
didn't
be at
someone
least like
bring
a,
up? Didn't someone bring up
shouldn't
that there
there?
are 800,000 to a million police officers in the United States?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
But shouldn't there be at least like a basic understanding? Like, I mean, you don't have to dump that entire like job load onto like one officer, but like they should like at least
Yeah,
have some
that's what I was
training.
saying.
Like, I
They
mean,
should have like different departments, like different like specialty units within the police that would be unarmed,